Hello, my name is Millard Kraft, and this is going to be a very different take and more complete take, I think, on the overall story of Elden Ring, specifically as how it pertains to what's motivating Queen Marika, who Marika is, who Radagon is, Ronnie, Glowmide Queen, integrates it all into a story that doesn't have as many questions. I'm coming at this from the angle of a journalist, but I also then went to medical school. Now I practice as an emergency physician. So I mentioned that only as a way of letting you know I read things differently than I guess somebody more casually playing. And maybe I'm not saying I'm right or wrong, but I think I have a story that at least has fewer questions in it. I tell this story to myself when I'm playing the game, reading the items, and it just makes sense. Now I did all that, and I read all these items, before I did the last thing in this game, which was endlessly grind in Mohgwyn Palace. 40 hours of that just to finish out leveling my character. And while I was doing that, for fun, listening to other lore videos, and there are some things I didn't quite catch on to or quite get, especially some of the other more minor characters. I'm not going to even question that, white-faced Vare killed Maiden. I think that's fairly obvious. But as I was listening to a lot of it, there's a lot of controversy over a few key areas that I think I can settle, or at least with a decent story settle. And that's the purpose of this video. I want to mention first that how I read the items might be a bit different than some people. I read a lot of sarcasm in these items. The Bestial Vitality incantation, for example. Having gained intelligence, the beasts must have felt how their wildness slipped away as civilization took hold. But what beast in this game isn't wild? They're all wild. And there's multiple references to, beasts and intelligence. Clearly that didn't go very well for them. And that's related to different lore in the game, but it's just an example of sarcasm. The game straight up lies to you, too. One of the most egregious examples, but very important examples, comes from the Crown of Godfrey, first Elden Lord. There's a lie inside the name as it is. He's not the first Elden Lord. Placidusax is. But remember, who's lying to you? It's not the producers of the game. It's not the writers. These are descriptions from the perspective of the Golden Order. The Golden Order wants you to think that Godfrey's the first Elden Lord, and I'll get to that why in a second. But let's continue on with the description. He led the war, this is Godfrey, he led the war against the giants, faced the Storm Lord alone, and then there came a moment when his last worthy enemy fell. And it was then, as the story is told, that the hue of Lord Godfrey's eyes faded. There's a lot to unpack in there, and there's a lot of lies. He led the war against the giants. He didn't finish it. We know he didn't finish it. Marika finished it. Marika was the one that actually finished that fight. And it says he faced the Storm Lord alone. No, he didn't. I'm not going to go into all the details of why. Again, I'm just going to tell you my overall theory here. The Storm Lord was fought with, Godfrey, but Godfrey was assisted by Placidusax and the capital at the time, which was Farum Azula. However, the Storm Lord blew away Farum Azula entirely. That's why, hint, giant storm. And that's why the Stormvale Castle looks like a giant dragon tried to eat it. That's not a coincidence at all. Now, there's more lore with, Leyndell and dragons, and I'm not going to get into that. Again, we're just talking about the overall story. However, once Placidusax was wiped off the map entirely, and all of Farum Azula was, now Godfrey's like, well, I'm the Elden Lord. I'm the only Elden Lord. Then the Age of the Erd Tree could start. And then once that started, it's like history started all over again. As a part of this, however, and in Farum Azula you will see, there were other Empyreans at the time, Marika, one of them, and the other one was the Glowmide Queen. The Glowmide Queen is in the game, but not in the way I think people generally see. The Glowmide Queen is in the game in Malekith's boss room as a statue, just as a monument to her. And if you look up where the candles are, underneath a very unusual looking Elden ring, you will see a woman who does not have any facial features or crown on her or hairdress, however you want to say it, that is similar to any other statue in the game. That's the Glomide Queen, and it's the only reference to the Glomide Queen. I'll tell you why in a second, but first I want to say George R. Martin just likes to do a lot of background building. That's how A Song of Ice and Fire is. There's so much in those books not related to current events because that's just what he does. He builds worlds, and the Glomide Queen was simply a part of this world. Otherwise, you're just dropped off in this world and go into a tree and, hey, there's your prize, and you don't really have any background or story. Uh, Looking at the Elden Ring above it, there's several clues to this and as to why I believe that's the Glomide Queen. I want to read the description of Siluria's tree. Primordial form of the Erd tree is close in nature to life itself, and this spear, modeled on its crucible, is imbued with holy essence. Looking at that spear, it looks awfully suspiciously similar to the overall pattern inside that Elden Ring. Because again, you're looking at an older form of the Elden Ring. But also down the middle, where Marika's seal is in the current Elden Ring, is a very different seal. That looks a lot like the Godslayer Greatsword. And that, I believe, is pointing directly down to the statue below at the Glomide Queen. Because that's the Glomide Queen. Marika had basically had her killed by Malekith. And again, this is all under the influence of the Greater Will. Now Marika could be the queen. So, unfortunately, Marika was very much under the control of the Greater Will. And I want to take just a quick sidestep there because another area of concern I have that people get lost with is Miquella. Miquella is not a great guy. There's a lot of videos talking about what a great ruler he is. There's a lot of sarcasm in that. No, he's just as evil as everybody else. Yeah, he's trying to help his sister, but he's also building his own Haligtree, and he's trying to take over the world and become a god himself. You know, those envoys, they represent the coming of a new god. That's what Miquella is trying to be. Read the description of the envoy crown. A faint whimpering from inside. It must have been their imagination. Those are those envoys spread all over the tree there. That's very significant because we know from many other items that the Albinaurics were going to the Haligtree for their salvation. Well, no, there aren't any Albinaurics there. You don't see any. There's not one at the Haligtree. That's because Miquella recycled them all into those envoys. He's evil. He has his unalloyed gold to get rid of the influence of the Greater Will. That's not really what that is. It's putting everyone under the influence of Miquella. Even Millicent recognized that. That's why she pulled out the needle. There is a way to get around, the Greater Will. Look at Eg. Eg is a great example of this. His mask description clearly states that mirrored mask is meant to get rid of the influence of the Greater Will. So, anyway, Marika is under the influence of the Greater Will. And as a part of this influence, you have to go out and kill everything you see. And the reason you do that is the grace of gold. Alchemy is a huge symbol. I mean, not just alchemy, elements represent different aspects of this world in this particular lore. And gold is a part of the Golden Order. That's their symbol. The grace of gold is the constant recycling of life. So when you kill somebody and take their grace, eventually somebody kills you, the Erd Tree takes your combined grace. It's this constant cycle of death, but every time there's death, the Erd Tree is like a casino. It's like the house. It always wins. It always gets the gold. So death is fueling the life of the Erd Tree. The cardinal sin is the end of that cycle. Marika doesn't know this, though, because she's fully under the influence of the Erd Tree, at least at this point in the story. Then the War of the Giants happens. Again, there's a lot of lore with that. Much of it, I believe, is to be correct from everything I've read and heard. But one thing I think that gets lost is what happened in that war. We don't have any reference to Radagon prior to this, and that's because he didn't exist. We know there was an exchange of curses. The curse on the fire giant was to guard the forge forever because the flames would always be lit. However, the curse given to Marika was Radagon. If you look at the description of the giant's red braid, it does read in part, Radagon was said to have despised his own red locks. Perhaps it was a curse of their kind. Oh, it very much was. As much as he didn't want to believe it was true, it was. The curse of their kind means the curse of the giants. Radagon's existence is that curse. I believe it's almost like one of those crazy end of Harry Potter movies, an exchange of curses kind of things happened, where Marika was so powerful, the fire giants just tried to split her in half. I think a lot of people also get confused with, was it a physical split? Were they two different bodies somehow? And no, there's no evidence in the game to suggest that they were ever two bodies. They're just uh, two souls, two bodies occupying one body. It's just something you have to wrap your mind around. There's a lot of split bodies, split souls in this game, and Mikola Saint Trina, a whole dropped part of the drama in the game for whatever reason. Maybe it's DLC related. I don't know. Ronnie and Melina, which I haven't quite gotten to yet. So that happened with Marika and Radagon. Now, another part of that is looking at their source seals. If it was an even split, you would think, oh, you'll get 2.5 points or 2.5 points to each attribute for each source seal. However, these are complementary. It's 5 points, and it's perfectly complementary between Marika's source seal and Radagon's source seal. So the reason of that is because this is not an even split. And the reason this relates to the plot is because the personalities were not evenly split either. Remember, everybody's under the influence of the greater will. However, only Radagon got that part. Radagon is all about the Golden Order. He loves the Golden Order. He's a huge fan of the Golden Order. When he rests at the Queen's bedchamber after fighting Morgoth, you'll get a spoken echo of Queen Marika, which reads in part, O Radagon, leal hound of the Golden Order, thou art yet to become me. Thou art yet to become a god. Let us be shattered both, mine other self. Marika was very well aware at that point that Radagon wanted to fully merge, but obviously by that point Marika wanted nothing to do with it. And Radagon was painfully aware of that. Even though, if you look at the Radagon icon, how he studied sorcery with Rennala, and as the husband of Queen Marika, he studied incantations. Thus did the hero aspire to become complete. He thought all this stuff would just make him back with Marika to become a god. It bothered him that they were split, and he did not like that at all. Nonetheless, they were split, and that's when Marika came up with the plan to try to kill the Erd Tree once and for all, and end the greater, not kill the Erd Tree, I should say, but at least alter the influence of the greater will and remove it so that we could finally move past this endless cycle. And the plan goes as follows. There is a plan to go out west and have war out there. So Rennala and Radagon initially fought and then marry. Some of those children are real and very much biologically Rennala's, but Ronnie is an Empyrean. The reason Ronnie is an Empyrean is because she is born of a single god, and a lot of people gloss over that because they just think, oh, well, maybe it's a mistranslation, maybe it's a typo, maybe people are taking it too literally. No, I think that's one time in which the game is pretty clear that, no, it's mentioned multiple times. Empyreans can only come from a single god. So how is Ronnie from a single god? Well, that's pretty easy. Radagon and Marika are always in the same body. So when they consummate that relationship, Marika had placed a fertilized egg inside Rennala, making Rennala a surrogate mother to Ronnie. She has no biological relationship to Ronnie. It's still Marika. It's still Melina. However, when the child was born, the child had the same kind of incestuous, deficit as pretty much every other Empyrean, it seems. And that deficit was splitting into two people, like Mikola and Saint Trina. We read the description the text from Melina when you rest at the Altus Plateau. She says, "It takes me back. I was born at the foot of the Erd Tree, where Mother gave me my purpose. Though now everything is lost to me, I have to ascertain for myself the reason for which I live burned and bodiless." I suspect Ronnie was born at the Erd Tree, and then Melina was absconded away by Marika and raised largely in secret as a kindling maiden. We look at the Blade of Calling description. It reads, Dagger given to the one set out on a journey to fulfill her duty long ago. The power of its former owner, the Kindling Maiden, is still apparent. There's a lot there to unpack, not the least of which is another item found in that same area. So again, the Blade of Calling is related to Melina. It's Melina's weapon used, which is similar to the Black Knife Assassin moveset that all other Newmans use. Melina is very much the embodiment of Marika. Still a daughter of Marika, very much a daughter, but pretty much all of Marika, in much the same way Ronnie had inherited much of Radagon, in that same kind of split. However, they very much are connected, which is why they both are aware of Torrent and are very sympathetic to Torrent. Melina, however, was hidden away with a plan to be a Kindling Maiden to set the Erd Tree afire. So she pretends to be a Finger Maiden because she never really was. She was always a Kindling Maiden, not a Finger Maiden. The reason I say this didn't go very well for her is because of another item people don't often look at inside the room where the Blade of Calling is found, and that's the official's attire. That says grubby blue robe worn by magisterial officials to carry out their grim tasks, surveillance, executions, and gruesome rituals. The darkest duties drive the wheels of mankind. At some point, the Greater Will clearly found out who Melina really is, and they were not very happy to know there's a conspiracy against them to burn the tree. So what they did is they marked Melina. That mark on her face is a three claws, three toes of a fowl. There is another item description in the game. I don't remember off the top of my head. I apologize. I think it's the four-toed fowl foot that mentions 3 digits as a bad omen. So they marked Melina as a bad omen. Then they burned her as a Kindling Maiden, but before she could get to the Erd Tree and burn the tree. So that's why Melina is burned and bodiless. Even if Melina didn't figure it out, I did. This happened after Ronnie had already set her plot in motion, probably in coordination with Melina, to be honest, or Melina with Marika through Melina. That is also why Ronnie's body is burned. You know, the curse mark of death doesn't cause burning. So Ronnie's body had burned, and then Ronnie's body was killed by the curse mark, and then later on it was burned when Melina was burned by the Inquisitor. So that's why Ronnie's body is burned, and that's why Melina's body is gone. But Melina's spirit can't be gone because Ronnie's spirit is still around. Very confusing, I think, but if you wrap your mind around it, it does start to make sense a bit. Now, the goal for Marika is for you to go in there and usurp the greater will. When we fight and kill or mortally wound, I should say, Morgott at the Elden throne, then you rest in the Queen's bedchamber. She says, "O Radagon, leal hound of the Golden Order, oh, thou art yet to become me, thou art yet to become a god, let us be shattered both, mine other self." I've already kind of covered that again, but the importance of that is right after you see Radagon's seal. The seal is on the tree that says that the impenetrable thorns refuse all. That seal is strictly Radagon. Radagon does not want you in there. However, that was Marika's plan. When Melina tells you she has to find her reason for which she lives, and when she's trying to get into the castle, the reason she finds out she lives is to get you into the tree. But you've been rejected from the tree by Radagon, who has already figured out you're there to do a very bad thing to that tree. When we get to the Snow Valley ruins, Melina says a very creepy thing to you. She says, "There's something I'd like to say. My purpose was given to me by my mother, which is to get you into the tree. But now I act of my own volition. I have set my heart upon the world that I would have, regardless of my mother's designs. I won't allow anyone to speak ill of that, not even you." That's when Melina's made the decision to sacrifice her soul, her spirit, and become the Kindling Maiden she was always meant to be, and let herself be killed to set the tree afire as a Kindling Maiden. That's different than the mother's purpose, which was just to escort you to the tree. She didn't want to have her own daughter die. She was already dead anyway. But now her spirit will be lost. So Melina is gone forever in that version of the game. So once you get into the tree after the tree is on fire, or you try to, you still can't get in because the tree can't die. And that takes me just a little bit off of an aside of destined death. That's more of a clarification that destined death is just what we call death. In this cycle, when the house always wins, the grace of gold, you can just start over and keep fighting because that's what the tree wants. That's how it lives, is through constant struggle. That applies to the tree itself. So when Melina sacrifices herself, you still can't get into the tree because the tree can't burn. The tree can't die because destined death is not yet unbound. And destined death just means once that tree's on fire, it's going to burn. When it burns, those thorns burn and you can get in. Once you do get in, Radagon is not very happy with you. So, of course, he's going to fight you using Melina's body, who absolutely does not resist. And then the Greater Will itself is able to use Radagon, the symbol of the Elden Ring at this point, because he's holding the Elden Ring inside his version of the body. And when you beat the vassal of the Greater Will, you can then reformat the ring however you want. So you can just do the Age of Fracture ending, which is just putting Marika's head back up. And it's fractured because it's an incomplete ring. You aren't getting a mending rune. Remember, the options are just to put on Marika's head or get other mending runes. Gold Mask is a very good example of this. Gold Mask knows that the Golden Order as it is flawed and very corrupt, but Gold Mask is fully loyal to the Golden Order as it's idealized. What you're kind of sold on it, even though we know it's a lie. But that's how he wants it to be. So the age of the Golden Order is how it really should be. So that's the Golden Order if you hadn't if it hadn't really truly been corrupt. Or like I said, you just don't do anything. You just put Marika's head back on, and then now you're the Elden Lord. But there's just no influence to the Greater Will anymore, and that was kind of Melina's goal for you. It's also Marika's goal, to be honest, as well. Just get rid of the Greater Will influence. In terms, I think that's pretty much most of what I wanted to say. There's just a few other loose ends here. People are very confused by Melina's appearance in the Frenzied Flame ending. I mean, I don't think it's confusing at all. I think that's... remember what Hyetta said when you inherit the power of the Frenzied Flame. She says, thank you, I have touched them, the words of the three fingers. As your maiden, allow me to divine them. All that there is came from the one great, and then everything's going to go back to being one. So that's pretty much what you're looking at. You're looking at Ronnie. You're looking at the complete Ronnie, Melina, whatever. The combination probably doesn't even have a name. The right eye is dark, which makes sense. Because look at the quote from Resting at the Third Church of Marika. She says, very well, in Marika's own words, my lord and thy warriors, I divest each of thee of thy grace. Which, of course, going back to it, is her just trying to get rid of Godfrey. But anyway, with thine eyes dimmed, ye will be driven from the lands between. Her eye is dimmed because she's lost grace. And the other eye opens up because the curse has been lifted. She's now merged back with Ronnie. So you're just looking at the original form that would have been if the two had never split. And she's pissed and wants to give you destined death because you burned the tree down. She wanted you to be Elden Lord, not ruin the whole thing. She's not the gloam-eyed queen coming out for revenge. She's coming out for revenge because you just did everything wrong. Unless, of course, you want to make everything one again. That's exactly what happened, of course, and that's why she merged, is because with this ending, everything merges. It comes back to one. And as a process of this, Ronnie and Melina had merged. So I'm just kind of looking over some of the notes I'd written down to see if there's anything else I really wanted to cover. Again, I apologize. I'm not a professional YouTube person. I just wanted to give my thoughts on what I think is a better and complete picture of what you're really doing when you're playing this game. And looking around here, I think I've pretty much covered most of it. So, not looking to be a star, not looking really to be a celebrity of any kind, but if you're just listening to lore videos as you grind, I think this is a very different interpretation of the story of Elden Ring and gives you a view that Marika just was a slave pretty much to the greater will, realized it, and came up with a plan to get rid of the greater will. And in my mind, that's the story of Elden Ring. Thank you very much for listening.